What's up, Applied English? Happy Virtual Friday. I hope you have a comfy place to sit and relax and learn today. One thing I like to do on virtual days is just encourage you to pause the video and say a prayer if you haven't yet for your learning today. Otherwise, we'll just continue onwards with our introduction in a moment. All right, so I hope you had a moment to pause and pray if needed. Our only objective today is to work on comprehension a little bit. We'll do quite a bit of reading comprehension, especially this month. I suppose today is a little more like listening comprehension with what we're learning in video today. You're watching our Unit 2 introduction video. Just want to give you a little overview of what we're covering over the month of February going into March. Please note that I will give a real brief look at today's quiz. It's a really tiny mini quiz at the end of this video. Do have until the end of tonight to complete that mini quiz. You'll want to watch this video first because it gives you guidance on it especially. And then from there, rest of this weekend is a great time to catch up on missing work if you have any. I am especially using this virtual day to get caught up on some grading for you guys. Check your Schoology gradebook, especially see if you have missing work to complete after today's virtual lesson. So, Friday, February 2nd is today, and we are watching that Unit 2 introduction video. One thing I'll note here is that I will attach the PowerPoint that I'm pulling up here below the video as well. So if you want to read along, you'll have that ability to do so. I'm just going to pull it up in PowerPoint itself here. All right, sorry if there's a weird jump in the video there. I just call this presentation Introduction to Unit 2, African American Literature. Let's see what's in store for us in this month of February. So first of all, we should probably address the question, why should we study African American literature specifically? To that, I would say, first of all, happy Black History Month. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I think February is a special month, very specific focus on Black history. I would say that Black History Month is designed for a couple of different things. One is that it does give us a chance to really solemnly reflect and respectfully reflect on past injustices, things like slavery, the Jim Crow era, civil rights protests of the 50s, 60s, 70s. It gives us a chance to reflect upon those things of the past, while also recognizing the pioneers who worked through those injustices, recognizing Black excellence, not just in civil rights and in protesting, but also in all areas of society and art, music, sports, business, any sort of realm that you can think of. I think Black History Month gives us a great chance to recognize Black excellence over time, going all the way back to the beginning of American history. And I think that Black History Month is good for celebrating African American culture, arts, traditions as a whole. I think it's good to give that sort of spotlight. So African American literature then, I think, is a window into all of that. It's an aspect of Black history in general. Black American writers have always, all caps always, at every point in American lit, have Black writers been interested in those themes. Justice and injustice, Black excellence and progress, making progress even despite the injustices. And then art, cultural traditions, music, those aspects that are beautiful about society. Again, African American literature gives a very good window, a very good insight into those things. There is a little timeline I found on the internet that I just want to show you real briefly here. We won't read it word for word. I'm just going to open it real quick. So this timeline, it actually starts a little bit late. It starts in 1852. Generally, when I like to teach African American literature in a more advanced setup, I would start with Phillis Wheatley in the 1700s as the first successful, not just the first successful Black poet in American history, but Black female poet on top of that. She was way ahead of her time. But anyways, I digress. We'll continue. As we flip through this timeline real briefly, you'll see some big names. Frederick Douglass comes up in 1852 there. Certainly we'll look at one of his texts over this coming week here as a really influential nonfiction writer. Just scooching forward through the 1850s towards the Civil War, you'll notice a lot of nonfiction, a lot of writers who are sharing their perspectives on things, especially to shed light on the injustices of slavery before slavery is outlawed. We get to Paul Laurence Dunbar. We're certainly going to look at him. His life is very, very interesting. Some scholars think that he probably would have become the most successful American writer ever of any ethnicity, any background, any gender. He probably would have been one of the most successful writers ever had he not died in his early 30s. You'll notice his name pops up a ton here because he published so many poems, even before the Harlem Renaissance. There's Lift Every Voice and Sing. That's the Black National Anthem by James Weldon Johnson. We also see Booker T. Washington's name pop up there as well. He is the main writer that we will look at in the month of February here as well. Major nonfiction writer. Scrolling down just a little bit, we're getting into the 1920s. So here we get to, there's Claude McKay, there's Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston. That's the Harlem Renaissance. I wish we had another month that I could teach you Harlem Renaissance as well, but that is a major English 2 unit that you'll get to anyways in these next couple of years. Just zooming forward as well, there's more Zora Neale Hurston, great fiction and nonfiction writer. There's Langston Hughes, one of the great poets in Black American history. I see Gwendolyn Brooks' name for the first time as well. It's very possible you've seen some of her poetry in middle school used before. Actually, I didn't even realize that she was starting to write in 1945 because she lived a very long life as well. Langston Hughes also lived a very long life. Notice that he's still writing in the 50s. I also didn't realize that Nikki Giovanni is as old as she is as well. It looks like she was writing fairly in the late 60s. She is still writing poetry today. You'll notice that poetry is a major genre in African American literature. Poetry has always been one of the main genres in African American literature. So we'll look at some poetry this month as well. And there's Toni Morrison. So once we start getting into the 70s, we get to the really heavy hitters when it comes to fiction writers as well. So Toni Morrison's one of the great Black novelists in American history. There's Alice Walker. She's written all kinds of everything. Poems, stories, nonfiction, you name it. Zooming forward just a little bit more, Jamaica Kincaid is one of the great short story writers in African American literature. There she is 5 times in a row in 1983. I see Maya Angelou as well. I probably missed her name on this list a couple of times because 1993 seems a little bit late for her. Another one of the great poetry writers and story writers in American history as well. We're starting to get into our lives. So I was born in 1992. You guys were born in the early 2000s. Let's see what we got here. There's Nikki Giovanni again, so notice a big jump into 2007 where she is still reading and writing poetry for everyone. There's the name I was looking for. It took me a little bit of scrolling, but I found her. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie as well. A name that you guys will certainly encounter time and time again as you study English. One of the great Black fiction writers today. Still writing. So 2009 was kind of a start there, but still very much writing as well. And I could nerd out about this stuff forever. But as we get into the 2000s, what I want you to see there is that there is still great African American literature being written. That's the thing about Black history, and it's the thing about African American literature. Sometimes we think of history and literature as things of the past, but these things are constantly being written. Both the positives, the things that we celebrate in our society today, but also the pain as well, as we think about the ongoing struggle, the ongoing issues, the ongoing need to uplift Black voices in our society. Let's continue. So, again, African-American writers, they've been successful in every genre that you can think of in literature. This month, we'll especially study nonfiction. We didn't do a lot of nonfiction last semester. And we'll mix in some poetry as well. Poetry has always been one of those top genres in African-American lit. We would be really remiss not to include some poetry this month as well. So our main text, the main thing that we will use kind of as our center for African-American literature is Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. If you do look up From Slavery, you'll find that it's his full autobiography. The version that we're going to be reading is abridged, so it's a shortened version of the full autobiography. The version that we're reading focuses mainly on his schooling, so his education. We'll learn more about his background as we get to him, but so much of his focus in his writing was how he found his education in his childhood going into his young adult life, and also his life's work after that in building up developing Tuskegee University. We'll talk a lot more about the university in this coming week as well. So our goals with this text, there's really three things that we want to emphasize. One is reading comprehension. We want to make sure that we are understanding what we're reading in nonfiction. Nonfiction reads a little bit differently from other genres. We want to have great discussions about educational success. I hope you find Booker T. Washington's story inspiring for yourself. But also, we want to tie this in with thinking about our own lives and legacies as well, which we'll be writing about in March. Anyways, what else are we covering in February? There are just a couple other things that we want to make sure that we hit this month. Up From Slavery is not a super long text, so we don't have to spend all of our time on it. Along with Booker T. Washington, we'll also read, annotate, discuss some other short nonfiction pieces. We definitely want to look at Frederick Douglass. We might look at some Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as well, maybe some current articles, etc. I really want to make sure I can teach you how to annotate text. Again, we want to mix in some poetry as well. English 2 covers Black poetry in a lot greater depth, if I remember correctly, so we probably only have time for a couple of the more iconic poets. Some Paul Laurence Dunbar, maybe some Langston Hughes, some Maya Angelou, and so on. We will continue to include study skills each week, so every Thursday or Friday we'll touch on study skills a bit. I think our first binder check is coming up on the 16th. Grammatically, we're going to mix in some punctuation lessons as well. Maybe not devoting entire lessons to it, but I do want to touch base on commas, semicolons, apostrophes, maybe quotation marks this month as we're gearing up to write in March. And once again, our main assessment that we're gearing up for is to do our only major writing project of the semester in March. This project does connect with the themes and content of what we're reading this month. But it also assesses grammar, punctuation, the things that we've been working on since the beginning of January. I want to see how you've grown as a writer between December's essay and March's writing project. Last thing I want to look at real briefly today is your quiz. It just covers a couple of questions from what we saw in that PowerPoint. So you'll notice some of these are multiple choice. Notice that number 1 is a not question, so be sure to read that carefully as you answer. Some of these are true-false, like 2 and 5 are true-false. So again, very short quiz. I encourage you to maybe give that PowerPoint another read if you need to. There's no timer on this quiz or anything, so I just wanted to see that you are paying attention and comprehending what's going on in our video. I look forward to starting this African American literature unit with you next week.